Right, Year 7, for our next tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to create a stencil print using freezer paper. Now over at the side, just some equipment that I've got. So I've got some paint over here. I've got some chrome acrylic, which is going to make that paint into fabric paint. I've got a sponge that I'll use for stenciling later on. I've got an example of the coral reef inspiration, so for this one I've used a fish. And finally over here the scissors that I used to cut out the template. So on the fabric here, first of all, just point out this is the right side of the fabric, whereas on the back of the fabric is where all the wrong side is, so you can see there from the lines. I've also last lesson showed you how to create your hem, and you can see that hemmed edge just on either side on there. So what I've done before this tutorial is I've taken my fish shape, drawn round it on top of my freezer paper, which is this special stuff here, and then I've used a pair of scissors or a craft knife to carefully cut round the outside of the shape to create like a silhouette image, which you can see here now. Once that's all nice and secured, I've ironed it then onto the fabric, and what it does with freezer paper, it creates a nice seal so that this is not going anywhere. I can move it and it's nice and secure. At the back of the fabric, because our fabric is rather thin, I've put some paper on there just to protect the table, and again just make sure that underneath your fabric where your stencil's going that it's all protected and won't move off. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix my paint, which I've got so far, with chrome acrylic. Now at the moment this particular chrome acrylic says 1 part to 2 parts of the paint, so I'm just going to add on there a little bit of the chrome acrylic. It's quite runny, and what it'll do is it'll make the paint stick to the surface. Then all you need to do then is mix that together. I'm just going to use the back of this pencil, and then when you treat it, if you heat set it with an iron, it'll actually fix it permanently to your fabric. So that's the fabric paint all mixed up and worked. Next I'm going to take my sponge, and I'm going to dab paint onto the surface. Now at the moment the sponge I've got is rather awkward for using, so what I'm going to do is just take a pair of scissors. I'm just going to trim that down so I've got more of an easier shape to work with. You really don't want to be going around the outline of your stencil for this particular piece. Also make sure that your sponge is nice and dry as mine is, and then you can begin stenciling. Now before I start, all I like to do is just practice kind of going around the edge without any paint, just to see the size that I'm going to be covering in with the fabric paint. Once you're quite happy with that, then of course take your paint and start applying to the surface. So here's my paint. Again, when you're applying the sponge in, you just want to get the tip of the sponge. If you get excess amounts of this, it's going to cause you lots of problems. So just on the edge, you can just see how far it's soaked in. You can always add more, but it's really difficult to take it off once it's on there. So again, one hand just securing the fabric so it doesn't wobble as much. Downward movements here, and you can start to apply. Now in this tutorial I'm just using a single colour, but of course there are a couple of different colours available for you. So again, if you want to use any of the other colours, then by all means you can do a two-toned effect. So if I was doing that, I might introduce a dark blue around here, but because I'm just going to be very quick with today's demonstration, I'm just going to very quickly dabble that on. Notice the stencil, I'm only covering the sides that I need to cover, and that's it. Now at this stage you may want to wait for it to dry. Also make sure your fingers, like mine, aren't as dirty as they are, because you do need to have clean fingers as you're peeling this away. Once the stencil's on, you can very quickly remove that freezer paper, and there you have your stencil design. It needs to take about 24 hours just to dry fully, and then in your next lesson run an iron over the top, putting a little sheet of paper over it so it doesn't burn it, and then your design will be ready and heat proof and wash proof. Thank you.